Welcome back to the 150K podcast. I'm your host, Joe Graham, where we help take your dreams to six figures and beyond. Today, I have with me Luis Camejo, co-host of the Biz Bros, content is profit, master all around Jedi of marketing, sales, you name it. I met him at George Bryant's event. We connected right away. I could tell he's a really cool guy. But Luis, for people that don't know you and don't know your background, tell us a little bit about you and what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, thank you so much for hosting us in your platform and your show. But like you said, I'm the half of the Beast Bros. We co-founded this company with my brother, also Luis. We call him Fonzie though, so he's a famous one. He's the one with the beard.
I'm trying to grow a beard today.
Right? For me, it's not working out either. We started the company about probably now like 6 years ago. So as a way to no go work for corporate, that was like the hate at the time. And we're like, we just really want to do our own thing. And, ever since we've worked together, we did like vinyl stickers, screen printing t-shirts. We did marketing for restaurants and so on. And right now we do a very specific type of content. We host this show called Content is Profit. And we help people kind of, multiply their message in different ways. So that's the fast version.
No, that's cool. That's cool. And what I want to commend you for is you've been in business 6 years. That's a long time in this space in a lot of ways, because, a lot of people, they get an idea, they start out and then they kind of, crash and burn because they don't have 1 million followers overnight. So since you're the content master, let's start here. Because a lot of people that listen to my show are sales professionals, new first-time coaches, entrepreneurs, people that maybe have a dream and idea. So how would you encourage someone to come and say, hey, Luis, I have this dream, but I don't know how to get out to the world. What would you say to them?
Probably there's gonna be a couple of questions of what have you tried before. More than likely is gonna be very simple, very basic things where they're like, oh yeah, I've tried to post a couple of times or failed miserably in consistency. And I say this with all property because that was us, right? And then after that it will be like, okay, try to find a system that you can be consistent. And then after that, as soon as you start being consistent, you're going to find these patterns and these things that you're going to observe that are going to be very unique to you and the way that you publish. And then from there, the opportunities come. So happy to share my story and how we kind of found that, but that's probably the gist of it. Because without consistency, then we can't measure anything. We can't connect with anybody. And, the list kind of goes on and on.
Yeah, no, do share your story. Cause I think it's key and it's going to give people a better perspective. Like I know a little bit of it because we've been friends for a while, we've talked, but yeah, give us a little bit of your background, your story and how you actually, cause it sounds like you were in corporate America for a little while.
No, well, not really. So, we grew up we're originally from Venezuela. And the dream was always to play professional soccer. So our life was really geared towards that. And, our whole days was structured to like, how can we practice? How can we play the most possible so we can actually go get that opportunity? And that was the one thing that we followed. Right. So, later when I was like 18, I'm 32 now. So when I was 18, I got presented with a choice to either stay in Europe playing or go back home. And I had a really negative experience where I decided to go back home and like kind of leave that dream or give up on that soccer dream, even though I was like very close to achieve it. Right. So that led to a lot of confusion, not talking to my parents probably for, I think it was like 6 months that I didn't talk to my dad, who was very invested in this thing, and try to find my footing back in college in Venezuela. At the time, the political situation got worse. And as you know, Venezuela right now is not the most stable country in the world. It's very difficult. So in my head, I always wanted more opportunities. I didn't really know what I really wanted outside of soccer. So experimenting and doing these things was really hard in that country, in that environment. So I decided to use soccer as a tool, as a vehicle to come to the States and for better opportunities, right? So I ended up getting a soccer scholarship here in a D1 school. And I didn't know it then, but basically we're selling ourselves, right? We sent 300 plus cold email to every single college from D1, D2, D3. And, I got 2 answers. And one of those was the college I came here in Jacksonville, Florida, which I continue to live on, right? So it turned out great. Through college, right? I'm playing soccer. If you have any student athletes in your audience or you're familiar with that, your sport is basically your job, right? You're there 4 to 5 hours a day, plus your classes, and it's just a lot of responsibility. So still was very connected to the sport. But because of my age group, I started as a 21-year-old freshman. So everybody that was my age group was graduating as I was like, in second, sophomore year, junior year. And I saw their reactions to the corporate world, and that they were not very happy, and they were trying to find other opportunities. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Right. So immediately, like my junior year, my senior year, I started looking for working opportunities. But the issue is that as an international student, you're very limited on those options. You have to work on campus, really anything that you can find in there. So I ended up coordinating a ropes course that we had. I ended up at a rock wall, intramural referee, like everything that I can get my hands on. But the trend was never in an office, never in a desk job, never doing something like that. And so I kind of knew that I didn't want to go to that 9 to 5 environment from that time. And then after that, after graduation, I was very lucky to find my wife, and we're together. We have a 2-year-old now. But
congrats.
Thank you. That allowed me as an international to have a little bit more freedom on like, okay, where can I go, right? Like, should I go get a job? And I did for a little bit. I ran a soccer franchise for about 3 years. We grew it from like 10 locations to 35 locations. We hired coaches, different things. And that was kind of like entrepreneurial. I was in the fitness industry for about 5 years, but always on the side, we had the Biz Bros, where we started with vinyl stickers. We bought these machines and we started cutting vinyl and creating these designs and sending it to different surf shops and calling and be like, hey, do you want stickers? And that whole process. And then we did screen printing t-shirts, and we had a screen printer in the garage of our house. We were living in a 7-bedroom house. Bless Katie, my wife. She was there with us as well. And she saw that whole part of the story. And then we learned very quickly that if you don't enjoy the process, probably it's not worth doing, right? We were up like at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning.
Yep.
Try to screen print in these t-shirts, sleep deprived, design will go right. And we had to like redo the whole batch, like 300 t-shirts. And we're like, very quickly, I don't think this is the thing that we want to do. So we quickly transitioned into the online marketing thing because there was a brand attached to the machine that we wanted to kind of develop, right? So with that, we went into marketing for restaurants, and that's the whole media thing that started. Now, while doing all of that, we did not document any of it. It was there was no content whatsoever in our accounts except personal things, right? So we'll share this story and people are like, oh my God, will you share some pictures of that stage? And we're like, we have nothing. We have a few, but it's like nothing compared to what we do now. And I remember we were pitching a group of business owners about the marketing services that they were doing, which at the time were like very customized compared to what we do right now. And one of the guys was, well, that's beautiful and all, like with the result, even the results that you guys achieved, that is, I don't know, where's your stuff? Like, where is it? And we're like, well, we have nothing. Like, we have nothing to show for it. And that felt like really like a gut punch. And that was the day that we decided to publish consistently. And for us, that meant going live for 45 days. And that process, what happened was it allowed us to share our message, to share our stories, to face the fear of publishing, right? Like, I feel comfortable in a camera. I think I always did, but my brother had like real trouble with that. And we know a lot of people that do. But then we didn't finish the 45 days because at day 15, we connected with somebody that became our highest paying client at the time. And then we're like, wow, indicator, consistency works. So after that, we started to figure out a system. Okay, how can we, according to like our resources, our consistency, our message, how can we create something that we can leverage later on? And that was Content is Profit, the show. And that's when everything took off.
Wow. So you unpacked a lot of things there that I want to make sure people catch first. So we're going to go back, and I'm just going to go through and have you just maybe go a little bit on it more. So you're in Europe playing soccer, which is like the cream of the crop for soccer, for most soccer people that I know. Yeah. And you had the decision, you were close to maybe being all the way, and you decided, no, this is not what I want to do. So you had the ability to make that choice. And then you ended up still using that gift and coming to the US. How old were you at that point?
When I made the choice for the US, probably 19 at the time. When I chose not to do soccer, I was 18. And so I was like, professional soccer players in Europe. 17, 18, that's when they make their debut there. I had a chance where I was going to play like a third tier division team funded by one of the first division teams. So that was a really, really, really good opportunity. But at the time I was going through an injury. I had a really bad coach. I just wanted a way out. I just didn't see the process. I wasn't enjoying the process. Then I'm like, if the rest of my years are going to be like this one, I don't think that I want to do this, even though the price is so close. So that's what made me decide. I thought I was losing my time going to school. I thought I was not going to be able to start because all my friends were starting school. And I was like, I'm missing out in a lot of things. So my decision was to just go back and go to school, which by the way, at the time, I don't regret at all. It got me where I am right now to probably better opportunities. So
and that's what I love about this, though, because I'm just hearing you tell your story, and then you get into school, and even when you're in school, you have that entrepreneurial spirit of, now I'm going to do my own thing. And that's a trait that I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs. Like, you were doing the screen printing, you were doing I'm an intermediate referee, I'm going to do all these little things. You can see success leaves clues. And then you got to the point to where, if I remember correctly, you guys tried stuff and failed, but kept going, which I think a lot of people that are listening to this need to understand in the entrepreneurial process. This is what it's about. You're going to have an idea sometimes, and it maybe didn't work, but now it's led you to where you're at now. So talk to us a little bit more about that, because you said you went through all this stuff, you didn't document it, but you learned more about it. What were some key things you learned besides, of course, we know doing content every day, but what did you learn through that process? I think that's something good there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that a lot of people talk about jumping off the cliff and just building the plane as you fall. For us, there were a lot of moments like that. There's some that still feel that way. Commit to the process, enjoy the process. For me, that's a big one. Right? Like, we just ended a contract that we had with a fitness company that we came in and we kind of redid the whole system and helped them with different things, but towards the end of the relationship, even though it was a client, it was not the right fit for either or, right? Like, the product was done and they got results, but there was different expectations, right, from both parties, and it was not a good relationship that we had. And the process while building it was fun, but then part of the process, there was a lot of friction. So we decided, okay, maybe this is not the right thing. So just like that with a client, even with the process that we do every single day, right? The way that we create content, for example, is a podcast, a main show that we do 3 times a week. And then after that, all the content gets selected from that. And it's funny because we have this conversation every single week, and we're like, okay, now we're able to publish about 50, I think it was like 500 pieces of content individually in different platforms last month. Right.
Oh, wow.
And we're like, okay, we can be present in many platforms just by doing these 3 shows a week. Obviously, there's a system and there's a team behind it. But we have this conversation often, especially with Fonzie. Like, he consumes a lot of content, right? Like, that's one of his things to do and to find patterns and different things. And he's constantly sending to our Slack channel, hey, look at this idea. Hey, look at this. Can we implement it? Right. And I'm like, okay. If we do it, is it going to slow down the way that we're creating right now? Are we going to enjoy it the most? And we've talked about different formats for videos, right? Let's say we talk about going to YouTube. There's different formats for YouTube rather than a podcast, right? Maybe a podcast is a little bit boring for YouTube content, but it is attractive for the podcast listeners that also likes to watch. So what is the audience that we're looking for? What is the intersect? So to me, that part of the process of trying to distill the information and like put it in step 1, step 2, step 3, it might not be attractive. So I'm probably not going to execute on that. And for him, he tried it and maybe it's not attractive for him. And that's why we don't execute. So with the business itself, I think that's one of the main ones that for me, I bring home, because if I'm not enjoying doing this, I'm probably not going to do it. So if I don't do it, maybe we can find somebody that does if it's absolutely necessary, which with the t-shirts, we didn't know. We're like, we need to be doing this squeegee thing and doing the screen printing. And we didn't have money to hire somebody. We didn't have money to hire a coach, for example, to guide us through these processes. So we decided not to do it and just pivot real quick to a different thing that we really enjoyed.
Yeah, but you were learning along the way. So you were going through the process and trying things and had the ability to pick what you wanted to do. Let's dig into this content a little bit more because I'm liking what you're saying. So like with your podcast, you do 3 a week. I do 1 right now. I was doing 2. I'll probably be doing some more solo episodes soon, but I took a little break from it. And from this side of the mic, and I've been on your show, so thank you for having me on there. I understand how much work it is, but you guys take it to the next level because if you're taking little increments and putting it on as content, that's like crazy cool. So you did how many pieces of content?
So last month we published about 500 pieces of content across multiple platforms. We publish on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. So we're constantly testing, right? And the content that we're producing now, we're actually behind on some of the batches. So each episode becomes a batch. So how we created is okay. The initial question was like, how can we be everywhere, right? Because we were, for the longest time, we were trying to emulate people like Gary Vee or, Grant Cardone. We're like, these guys are everywhere, right? So instead of omnipresent, we decided that we were going to go with relative omnipresent, which is show up where your people is, where your community is. So when we launched the show, we launched it very organically. We just started, right? And then we started posting and we started tagging people that were inside of that community. So for us, it was a ClickFunnels community, and inside of the groups, inside of the communities that we were at, and the reaction of people like, wow, guys, I see you everywhere, multiple points of contact, right? And I know with you is incredible. You're an incredible salesman, right? So the points of contact matter. And sometimes it's not the like, it's not the comment, it's not the engagement. Sometimes it's just they see your face.
Yes.
And this was incredible because I remember earlier this year we were in Nashville for an event. Actually, was in Orlando, and in this event they're giving this $1 million prize for people that cross $1 million in sales. We have not crossed $1 million in sales. I don't even know. We're probably a third of the way there, but and I don't say this for reflect, I'm saying for reference of what's about to happen. So while they're doing these awards, there's people coming on stage, and I just walk outside to go to the bathroom. And on my way there, I see a group of people that we met. Some of them were podcast guests, and I just stop by, say hi, and her name is Chantelle, and I'm like, hey Chantelle, what's up? Are you guys gonna go get the prize? And they're like, oh no, man, we're too far away from that. Maybe next year, we'll see. But you guys did, right? And I'm like, no. I'm like, what? You guys didn't get the $1 million? And we're like, no, not yet. Probably next year. It's fine. Like we just, the product that we're selling now is probably a couple of years old, and we're still refining. We're still finding market fit. We're still going through all that stuff, right? So, and she was like, oh my gosh, I thought, like, I knew you guys were gonna get it. So the impression of just putting content out there, and this is a person that told us, hey, I see you guys every single day out there. The perception from the outside world is way higher to the one that we can have. So we're like, okay, perfect. Like if that's a perception, let's use it in our favor, right? Let's be like, how can we now that perception turn it into leverage to create opportunities for our business, right? And that was one of those like light bulb moments. I mean, I'm not saying fake it till you make it, right? Because we're publishing every single day, we're delivering value every single day, but how people see you from the outside, just for the fact that you are consistent in your publishing, can change everything and can change a decision from a no to a yes.
But you didn't fake it till you made it. You were just consistently doing your thing, and they said, so that's like the universe, God saying to you, hey, this is coming because you're doing the things you need to do. Like I've noticed, I've only been in this game for 6 months. I've been in sales for 15 years, but actually it's 9 months now, since June. So 9 months. My math's not always the greatest.
No public math.
But I'm very consistent with what I'm doing, with how I'm trying to get stuff done, with, doing stuff every day. When you guys did the 45-day live challenge, like, hey, that's easy. I can do it every day at 9 o'clock in the morning. And I told people I'm going to do it at 9 o'clock. And I noticed that my videos in the beginning had like 10, 12 people. But by the time it was done, it was like 115 people on average watching. And I'm like, holy crap. And it wasn't like they were the greatest videos. Like I'm literally walking with my iPhone. There's nothing special. And I was just producing content and talking to them. So yeah, I commend you on that. I see it coming because you're touching so many avenues. My question would be, what type of content are you doing? Is it always, because I mean, I've heard two schools of thought. Some are like, do the business, do the business, do the business, do the business. And some are like, do the business some, have some fun, let them see into your life, get into your world. And then my second question is, do you target a certain audience group with your content? Like, do you have someone in mind?
That's a good question. To all that, I say F all that. There's so many frameworks, right? Like,
yep.
We've had probably 200 guests in our show, and every single one has their own framework, right? And so, I'm a big fan of start, and then from there, then what's your format, right? So there's some people are not going to feel comfortable sharing their daily lives, right? They're not going to be people they're not going to be comfortable sharing their behind the scenes, right? What do you feel comfortable with? We have this concept that we call content umami, right? And umami is like this Japanese concept to where when you eat and you feel satisfied, you're not like full, you're not like exploding, right? You're just satisfied and you're not hungry anymore. Probably a concept that not many Americans know, because people like to eat.
It's true. It's true.
Over here, but it's like, okay, it's like, it's that moment where you're like, I could have like 2 more bites, but you don't, but you still feel satisfied, right? So we're like, okay, what is my content umami? Like, what is the content that I feel proud of, that I feel that I really like putting out there, right? So that's the beginning stages. So we came from like literally not publishing to do this, right? And we've also helped millions of $1 million companies to create their content systems. Guess what? Every single one evolves to something different. So I'll give you a couple of examples, right? We had when Clubhouse was a thing, we jumped in a couple of sessions, and we had this lady asked us that, hey, we're promoting the 45 Live. The first time that we did it publicly, we had about 100 people in this private challenge. And she was debating, should I do it? Should I not? And I started asking some questions. What's your business? And so on. And for her, she was a florist. So she's like, I don't know. What should I talk about during my 45 days? It can be very intimidating for a lot of people, especially if you haven't published, right? So, we start asking some questions, and we're like, sounds good. What do you do, in your daily life? What do you do in the store? Like, what happens in the store when you're there? So for her, there was every single day there was something happening. It was like a new arrangement that they were creating. And I'm like, okay, put a theme on the 45 Live, right? You don't have to publish. There's people say like 5 categories, 4 categories, family, work, blah, 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 right? Sounds good. If that's too much overwhelm at the moment, pick one, right? So for her, she committed, right, to 45 days of just shooting behind the scenes. And it was a very simple format. It was like, hey guys, what's up? Today we're doing this arrangement for a wedding. Here's what's happening. And they'll show the thing, and it's like, this is the type of flower that we're using, and why do we put it this way, and so on. And for her, it was very frictionless to start producing and being consistent because of that. And now people started to connect, right? Now you master that. And okay, well, now I have category 1. Sounds good. Now you can master distribution, but that's the other thing. A lot of people create and don't distribute. So once you master the distribution, you're like, can I add another layer? So the next stage is, for example, our podcast, right? We have a couple layers. We have 45 Live when we really want to push something. So we do that. Our framework there, my framework at least, Fonzie has a little bit different one. My framework is, I'm going to grab something that happened today or something that I learned today, and I'm going to share that story, and then I'm going to add my lesson to it about business or content, right? So that's my framework. With the show, different is guest centric, right? Because we build relationships through the show. So first, we don't care about the numbers. If the numbers grow, great. I think we're about to hit 20,000 downloads across platforms of the macro. That's not counting the micro assets. We're like, sweet, awesome. Like for some people, that's like, what? That's insane, right? For some others, they're gonna be like, whatever. But they'll probably, there's no reference to like, how can we compare this, right? Like to what shows? Probably yours. How many episodes do you have, Joe?
56.
56
released so far. Yeah.
Congrats. Absolutely incredible. You're the top 1% of podcasts worldwide, right?
That's crazy.
That's incredible, right? That's crazy. It's because most people fail after episode 7. So you're like, okay, there's a huge problem with consistency. So before trying to find out what type of content should I be creating, we have to figure out how can I actually be consistent to continue to do that. So guess what? We talk about something called the publishing pyramid, right? So at the bottom of the pyramid, and how we got to understand it is like top bottom. So at the top, you have resources, right? Money, time. So you as a company or you as a solopreneur, right? Or as an enterprise, you got to understand what are my resources or what are the resources that other people, right? If they're doing. So a lot of people are like, hey, I want to be like Gary Vee. Sounds good. Do you have $15,000 to hire 3 TikTok specific editors, right?
Yep. No, I do not.
They're like, yeah, most people don't like, we don't even, right? So we're like, okay, well, we cannot expect to have that output, right?
Mhm.
Because they have very specific people for very specific roles. So we got to understand what are our resources, right? Right under that, those resources are going to create a capacity, right? What is the capacities? If do I have a video editor that has X amount of hours? Am I the one editing the am I the one editing the videos? How much time do I have? What is my capacity? Right below that is your consistency cadence.
Mhm.
You got to understand, how can I be consistent? Like, how can I be consistent every single day, 2 times a week, 3 times a week? What is it? You got to decide on that. And then at the bottom is like, what is my message, right? So now that we understand all those steps, we're like, okay, we start developing from the ground up. So I'm like, okay, what's my message? Well, my message for me is for podcasters to multi-purpose their content because it's going to help them leverage their relationships. For example, that's one of the things that we do. Sounds good. I'm going to talk about that. How can I talk about that? Share stories about that, share success stories, sharing data about podcasting, for example, right? Sounds good. All right. Now, on top of that, it's like, how consistent am I going to be with that message? Well, I'm going to be consistent in the case of 45 Live every single day for 45 days. In the case of on our podcast, 3 times a week with our guest, right? Sounds good. The commitment is made, right? Keep in mind, I haven't talked about Microassets yet, right? It's just the shows. Then on top of that, I'm like, okay, what is our capacity? Or our capacity to produce the show, for example, is 3 hours a week, right? So that's what we allocate for it. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 3.5 per day. 1.5 per day for pre-show, post-show, for example, right? Do we put it in the calendar? Perfect. Now, what is the post-production process? Right now, we have a team that takes care of that. But when we started, the post-production was about an hour. So we have to put that in the capacity lane, right? Perfect. Now we schedule everything out. Maybe it's not 3 times a week. Maybe it's just 1 time a week. Can we sustain that with the consistency that we committed? Thumbs up? Yes. Now, what are the resources that I have to do that? Is it just me? Is it my time? Do I have a team that does it? And so on. And you start adapting. What happens is, as soon as you start publishing and you attach it to a sales process, like you incredibly do, right? Then those resources that are coming at the top, we can reassign it to the whole rest of the pyramid. So now you can create different pyramids for different types of publishing. So you could have your pyramid for your show. You can have your pyramid for Instagram. You can have your pyramid for TikTok. And now you can start experimenting as long as you keep consistency with the other two, right? So that's one of the things that we talk about. Hopefully that was helpful.
No, it was great. So you again uncovered a lot of really good stuff. First, you had to find your voice. What is your message? How do you want to do it? Like, because you were talking about with the lives and stuff. I literally would think 10 minutes before I would go to my life, what am I going to talk about today? And sometimes it would be on sales and tips like that. And sometimes it's just on some random thought. So know your message. Then you talked about, taking your content and redoing it, but being it how you are. You don't have to be Gary Vee. You don't have to be Grant Cardone. You can be who you are. And I love the pyramid thing because like I am a one-man show at this point, like I just started doing it. And I'm kind of funny, like you said, finding your own voice. I literally, unless something really bad happens on my podcast, I don't edit it. I like the laughs. I like the mess ups because I think people like that realness. At least that's my whole perspective. And then I have friends that do podcasts and everything has to be perfect for them or they can't handle it. So it's just finding your thing there. So when you're starting out, like say people who are like listening to a show like me, when you're starting out and you're allocating time and resources for that, and I know you said everyone has a different thing. How do they find a balance of it? Because some of them, like me, work a full-time job still. Some of them maybe are just all the way in. Do you have any like tips or thoughts on that? Maybe balance is not the right word because I don't think entrepreneurs really have balance, but
on how to coordinate, I guess, their publishing efforts.
Yeah, because say, someone starts a podcast and they get to 7 episodes like, holy crap, this is too much work. I don't want to do it now, or I'm not getting the results. How can they formulate a plan of action? I know you kind of just touched on it, but just maybe we can dig a little bit deeper on that.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the first things that you gotta identify is like, why are you doing the podcast, for example, or the publishing, whatever publishing that you do, right? So probably a very big chunk of those that fail, I'm pretty okay to assume that the goal was probably just to make money off of it and be like, I'm gonna go viral. Well, podcasting is probably not the platform to go viral because is the distribution sucks, to be honest. But why do we podcast? Well, we can use it for many ways. Right? For many reasons. We can use it to explore our voice, to practice, to connect at a deeper level. Also because the listeners are higher quality, right? You're in their ear for a longer period of time. Probably also there's a revenue data set attached to a podcast listener. Compared to other platforms are the ones that earn the most. So you're like, okay, if I want to sell something, probably that's one of the audience that I want to hit. But also you can leverage a bunch of stuff. Like you can create 1 hour of content and then you can feed all the other platforms with an hour of content. Now, so objective number 1 is, okay, what is your goal? So for us, the goal of the show itself, the macro video, is to go and connect with incredible entrepreneurs that we could potentially down the road be a partner with. They can be our clients. We can be our clients. We've invested in coaches that we brought into the show, and because we build that relationship, we're like, well, that's a great person to invest with, and then we go in and we do it, right? We've been part of we MC different events. For example, our dear friend George Bryant invited us to his mastermind in Montana to MC it because we built that relationship over the podcast. We've struck different partnerships with agencies. We got clients out of the show, different things, right? And so for us, the priority is that relationship. So that's why we don't really see the numbers, right? I do see it because we're going to track and see now that is, now we're being consistent. Now we're like, okay, how can we improve on this? So I think that's number 1. And then after you define that, what's success for it, you're going to have to start looking for indicators, right? So for us, it's like, okay, how many relationships can we create in a year, for example? Well, for us, it's 3 a week, right? So we're like, okay, thumbs up. Are we moving in the right direction? Perfect. Sounds good. How can we build on that? Right. So for us, what we're working on right now, super behind the scenes stuff, right, is it's no secret, is the pipeline, right? The show is just part of our pipeline, and it's just a very high quality point of contact. So now we're really, really good at asking for the interview and interviewing some people. We have an incredible track record of 100% of the people that we ask say yes. We're like, what? That's incredible. So now we're working on the second half. What happens after that interview? What is the follow-up process? How do we continue to build this relationship over time? Right? Because that's the objective. So I highly recommend it. For us, that's how we use it. If you're trying to go viral, try to explore different platforms, right? TikTok has a high virality aspect to it, but you also have to create on the platform. So we have a client right now that we're going through this, right? The content that is published, that is highly edited, is not grabbing a lot of traction. We have to adapt, right? So we can create some pieces, but everything must be done on the app because that's how they want you to use that app. But the same clips on YouTube Shorts, for example, we just published a couple of clips on YouTube Shorts. Same clips that we do on Instagram, they got like 2,000 views each. And we're like, what? That's different interesting.
Platform.
Exactly. Indicators, right? And we're like, sounds good. Let's do more of that. And let's test it. How are we testing it? Well, should we put a link and see if people actually go there? Should we put money behind? I don't know. There was a stage where we put money behind the shows. We put probably like $5 an episode, and viewership like quadrupled, right? Just with $5. But it's like, okay, how can I build my testing on your consistency and go from there? Start adapting. You get your content map is going to look very different to everybody else's.
No, and I love that. And I'm just going to plug for them. So if you're looking to do this stuff and he's talking about it, maybe you should reach out. In fact, I always do this in the middle of the show. I just like it in the middle. I don't like doing it at the end. Tell people where they can find you and connect with you, because this way they get to hear it. They can't just cut off at the end and disappear.
Absolutely. And thank you. But so our site, you can go to bizbros.co, bizbros.co. You'll find some information on the show and the things that we do. You can also go to contentisprofit.com, and both sites will send you to the right places.
No, that's awesome. So let's get back into this a little bit, because I'm with you. I've noticed, like, for me, Facebook's really, really good. And then I've actually started shifting toward LinkedIn because I work in that sales realm, professional sales. So B2B sales professionals are like a target audience for me. Business owners, stuff like that. And I do use my podcast to make connections. Like, that is something that one of the biggest reasons why I do this, But I think the biggest key that I've heard throughout this whole thing is make it about people, make it about relationships. Your relationships will build everything else that you need to do. And going forward with that, the content can come once you understand your voice, your message, and you make the right connections. Am I hearing what you're saying correctly? And then it's just tweaks and testing and finding which voice and which way you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what is your minimal viable show, or what your minimal viable content, right? If the priority is the relationship, right? Resources are going to come, because if you're focusing on business, and if you're a business person, right, and you're not scared of selling stuff, then the resources are going to come. So, okay, now how do we adapt those resources to leverage more of the content, right? So here's an example. We had a call with a guy. They do public auctions for commercial real estate.
Oh,
so one client for them is worth millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. So we had this conversation, and we're like, okay, they have zero presence online. It's been just websites, and that's it. And personal reference. We're like, why are you guys trying to go into this space? Right. And we're like, well, we kind of need to, because the competition is doing it, right? So we don't want to be left behind. And that was the reasoning. And I'm like, okay, well, if the referral thing is working, right? Like, I do feel, my personal opinion is that every single company needs to also be a media company, right? Because you can control your message, you can control your own cadence. You will be present every single time. There's many reasons of why people should be publishing every single day. So we're like, now, if that's the standard, how can we create something that could benefit not only your sales department, but also, elevate your company's profile, right? So we started digging. We're like, sounds good. Like, how much, how much? Tell me about your closing percentage. For him, it was like about 10% of the people that he jumps on phone calls with or whatnot, and it's very different deal sizes. But and on an average, it's probably like $500,000 per deal, right? And I'm like, sounds good, 10%. Okay, so what will you say if I tell you that we can have 52 very high quality leads or conversations with those prospects? Right? He's like, oh, that would be incredible.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I'd be like, let's go.
So it's like, okay, so out of those 52, if you're telling me 10% closes, right, after that initial relationship, I'm not good at public math, but that's probably what, 5 people?
Yeah, we'll say 5.
We'll say 5. And your average price point is, your average sale is 500,000.
Yeah,
that's $2.5 million right there, right? So it's like, and he's like, perfect. How do we do that, right? What landing page and the thing? And then we're like, here's the secret. We just do a weekly conversation with these people, right? And you brand it as a show, you brand it as a podcast. Well, guess what? Not only you have that direct access to that person, right? That you can build a relationship, and then you feed it through your sales process that you already have, but also the content that's there, we can, create different assets from those interviews, because they're going to have a lot of value, and we can revamp what we call the safety net. So all the content that goes on the side is going to help their company when people start listening and tuning in, because consistency is what helps you move forward and get people to tune in. Maybe commercial real estate topics might not be very hot as, maybe Logan Paul and the fights that they did the other day, right? It cannot go maybe as viral, but people are going to start tuning in because of the message. We talked about publishing pyramid, right? They're going to see that you're consistent. So they're going to associate that with you are legit. And then they're going to start calling. And that's exactly what happened with the real estate company that we started, working with. And that was a pretty insightful conversation. And they're like, oh, wow, this is super awesome. Now, here's the story, though, like the full disclosure with the story. Like, what happened with these guys? Well, they were located in New Orleans. And this was when the hurricane last year hit, and the whole building got blown off, and so we had to. I know they're all okay, by the way. They're all okay.
That's good. That's good.
That is really good. But it's the conversation's moving forward, and it's like, okay, well, if this can illustrate, right, and there's a few elements there for salespeople that we gotta be aware. Okay, what is our closing percentage? Like, what is our process? Do we have a sales process, right, that we can actually plug this into? If you do, this is a very powerful way to connect.
Well, and it makes perfect sense, because then once you know your numbers, because I love like knowing my numbers, how many people I need to talk to close, then with content, you can get more active people that are interested in what you're doing, your brand building. And it sounds like with them, you're saying, hey, no, stick on message. I know the Logan Paul thing sounds cool. You can have some fun stuff, but still make sure you want to attract your viewers. You don't want to get like a MMA podcast for your commercial real estate. It's not going to work, but just sticking on message. But then if you could have even got him, he gets 52, then he goes to 100. Well, holy crap, 2.5 now is 5 million, and he only needs 100 people because his target audience is set. It's that power of dialing deep sometimes, which I think sometimes people want to go super, super big, but you really just need to know your message and your clients. I love that, man.
Keep in mind, 2 hours a week. If you go to 100, right? It's just 2 hours a week. If we do a weekly or bi-weekly thing, right? It's like crazy. And you're like, sounds okay. That's perfect. Like, who do you want to talk to? Basically, like, it's just the open door to that thing. And this is like that with every platform, by the way. Like, if you want to do TikTok and you want to grow on TikTok, is collaboration, right? What's another creator on TikTok that we can collaborate with? If you want to go to YouTube, same thing. It's just a different format on how people interact with the content, but with the content. But it's like, who can I go that I can interact with them, right? If it's Instagram, how do we collaborate together? Is it an Instagram live? That's a lot of things that they're doing because they're sharing audiences, right? So it's the same frameworks. It's just, presented in a different format. So let's not reinvent the wheel. But like, okay, how can I figure out what I feel comfortable with, going back to Content Umami, that I can publish in the platform that I feel comfortable first, to then create my resources so I can create leverage after that.
Yeah. Well, and again, it goes back to relationships and connecting and knowing how that platform works, which I love. By the way, they are awesome at emceeing events. It was funny, crazy. Our buddy George is having their event coming up, but they were the MC at the one in October. It was nuts. I enjoyed it. They got me to hula hoop, and I can't dance. So that tells you they have some skills there. So what other words of wisdom, thoughts, ideas, maybe that I've missed asking you on in this content for profit journey have we not talked about?
Yeah, we hit a lot. It's funny. A lot of people, when we had this awesome experience for the first time after, because we started the show at the beginning of the pandemic, like 2020, March 2020, when we lost pretty much every single client that we had because they were brick and mortars, right?
Yep.
We were like, oh crap, what do we do? Well, let's do the show. And we were publishing kind of, in our studio. We didn't go to live events because of XYZ. There were no live events, right? And finally, when we get the chance to go to Orlando to this event, we're out there with a community, and we're like, we decided to do a live episode over there, like in the middle of the check-in.
Oh,
like,
nice.
we're like, this is gonna be awesome, right? So we grab our suitcase, we had equipment there, we walk in there, and we see one person that that we had on the show, and we say, hi, what's up, guys? So awesome to see you guys in person. And we walk two more steps, we register, and then we start setting up. And as soon as we start setting up, these people that have been on the show, or that know people that have been on the show, or have listened to the show, start walking towards the table, and we start saying hi to them. We start having conversations, and we talk. And 6 hours later, it's 8 p.m. at night, and we haven't started the show. And we're like, this is crazy. I mean, we just published online, and we just spent 6 hours connecting with incredible entrepreneurs with incredible stories. And that was moment number one. So like, publishing consistently, as soon as you connect it to like a live experience, and you're like let's meet up, and the community aspect is very powerful. Now that same night, when we're walking back to the car to leave all the stuff, we see this guy like on the side, and he like kind of looks at us, and we looked at him, and we just continue walking. We don't know this guy, and he starts walking, trying to like get past the bushes and to meet us. And then he does meet, and he's like, guys, what's up? And we're like, oh my gosh, what's up? And he's like, you don't know me, but I've listened to every single episode that you guys have put out. I'm also from Jacksonville, Florida. And we're like, whoa, this is like insane. Like, to us, like, that was one of those first moments that was like a highlight of publishing. Just getting recognized was very, very surreal. But also, we took the opportunity to have a conversation with him, and we're like, okay, he doesn't fit our clientele for the service, but there's a lot of people that have been asking for different things. And this is what's going to happen as soon as you start developing the audience. They're going to start asking you how to do things. And we have assumptions of what that could be, and how can we serve those people. And for him, it was a lot of the equipment that we use, right? It's like, what is the equipment, and what is the thing, and what is the software, and where's the thing? And we're like, and even though that sounds so sexy and it's fun to have like super nice equipment, I'm going to put it out there, it's not necessary. Nope. There's people that do their show on their phone like this. There's people that record it on their watch. Frank Kern, a massive marketer, right, does his podcast show out of his watch, right? Wow. And you're like, don't let that be an excuse to publish, because the questions I was asking him, like, look, if there's like a resource that we can build, that we can create for somebody like ourselves, like 2-3 years ago, like, what would that be? For me, what the assumption I had was a lot about the process, or the pipeline. How do we connect it to sales? But the feedback that we got from him and many others has been, what is the right equipment? I'm like, what does that matter? I mean, as long as we have an equipment that we can communicate with, after that is good. So maybe is very unpopular opinion, because having the equipment is very sexy, but we closed our biggest deal that changed everything out of a Facebook Live that I did on the phone that I had at the time at 11:30 at night in my living room. So don't let the equipment stop you. It's just an excuse to not execute. Start executing as you get resources, go and reassign them, right? Like, here's another, like, we obviously, you see this beautiful mic and we have the board for the live show, but that was an excuse because when it came out, is a famous Rodecaster Pro. We were like, we're going to drop $700 over here to like, and we're going to do the show. We bought the equipment and it collected dust for almost 2 years. We never used it because we didn't commit to the message and the consistency and the cadence, right? Once we committed, we were lucky that we invested in that 2 years ago, but we would have done it on Zoom call. I had a guy interviewing us one time, and he's in his car, right? He's sitting in his passenger seat with a laptop on, and we started the interview, and I'm like, man, like, I gotta ask you, like, are you at work? Like, and let me be clear, like, I'm not judging at all. I'm just very curious. Like, I think this is awesome that you're doing this. I'm just very curious on what's the situation, because it's very uncommon, right?
Yeah.
And he was just using his AirPods, and I'm like, oh no, man, I live in a studio apartment with my girlfriend. It's just, one bedroom, and she's up there doing her thing. Like, she's studying, she's listening to some classes. So what I do is I just come here to the car and record my show.
I love that, man.
And it was a Zoom call with his headphones on. That's it. And we had an incredible conversation. The conversation lasted about like hour and a half. And I still remember this dude because of that experience. And I'm like, I commend you for like doing that, and for like not taking no for an answer, and just like with what we have available, creating that space to communicate and build that relationship. So maybe something that's not said often is like, ignore the equipment, right? What is that resource that you have now that you can communicate? Everybody has these phones. You can do it. There's platforms that you can do it and just record it as a phone call, right? Or an Instagram live. Do an Instagram live, and then that content you can create a bunch of it. You can download it. You can put the audio on it. So that's, I guess, I'm very
I love that, man, because here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing. This headset's $30. It's my work headset. I've sold hundreds of thousands. I've sold millions of dollars worth of deals over this. It's a $30 headset I got for my son 3 years ago, but he doesn't play computer games. He plays on the Xbox. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to take this to work. And I liked it. When I started my podcast, I have a desktop, I guess, desktop camera, and this, and I've actually recorded 60 some plus episodes. I've only released 56. That's why I said 56. Yes. But it's like you said, you just have to start. You just have to start doing where you're at. And then as it goes along, you can get the sexy mics and the different stuff that's what you want. But the people that are going to be attracted to you are going to be attracted to you. So yeah, excuse me. I agree with you 100%, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Also, thank you again for being on the show. This is one half of the Biz Bros. I'm actually going to have Fonzie on in a couple of weeks as well. We'll get to hear his stuff. So any cool, crazy stories about Fonzie that you can tell us, since he's not here to defend himself? I'm teasing. If you want to tell a story, you can.
Oh, let's see.
Only good things, though. Nothing super bad.
I don't know if I want to. No, if we share something, it's to throw him under the bus. No, I'm kidding. Like
remember, he gets to be on the show after you.
He does. We'll see if he's actually nice to me now, but he's actually a really, really cool person. I love working with him. It has been a journey. We were in an interview yesterday, and they're asking, how do you guys work together? And it's just a whole process that we had to develop to be able to make decisions. And I'll say this: I've been very lucky that I found him as a partner in the things that we do, because doing this by myself, I don't think I would have lasted very long. So to those out there, if you have somebody, if you have either a co-founder, doesn't have to be your family, but if you have somebody that you can share this journey with, whether that's a friend, whether that's a community, is not easy, especially if you're diving into publishing. There's a lot of fears. There's a lot of things that come out and your personal growth journey that is that will be very helpful to have like a good partner. So that's all I got to say.
That's awesome. Thank you again, Luis, for being on. I appreciate it. Check them out at the Biz Bros at Content is Profit. They have a podcast. It's on Facebook Lives all the time. You do what? Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays?
Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are the live shows, the behind the scenes. So you'll see like all the little details. And then Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, those episodes are released on the podcasting platforms for people to listen to.
Yeah. And I listen to the podcast all the time. They have awesome, great guests. I loved you guys just did a solo podcast. You need to do more of that. I really like the two of you guys do. I actually said solo.
Thank you.
You did a duo podcast on podcasting stuff. I listened to it today. Thought it was great. Thank you all for listening again to the 150K podcast, where we take your dreams to 6 figures and beyond. And until next time, have a great, wonderful day, and be consistent in your podcasting, content producing, in any way you share your message.